My name is Samuel Cohn. In Hebrew, my name is Shmuel Cohn. I am the son of Moshe Cohn and Bluma Cohn. Moshe Cohn and Bluma Cohn. I was born on August 29th, 1953, the 18th day of El Tafshin Yud Gimel. My father and mother, Moshe Cohn and Bluma Cohn, or Elise Cohn, was her English name. They came to the United States in 1949, about June of 1949. My father was born on January 17th, 1917. He was born in Krasna, Romania in January 17th, even though it was Romania 2 years later when he grew up in 1919 through the issue of the League of Nations. When he was born, it was Hungary, and it was part of the Austria-Hungarian border. Krasna is a town near Cluj in Salish County, Romania today. My father grew up, his father was Shmuel Hyman. There's a story that I'm going to get to later of how the name changed from Hyman to Cohn. But I'll talk about that as I talk about more about my parents and how they got how they changed their name. So Shmuel Hyman and Perel Hyman, nee Spitzer, Perel Spitzer, they got married in I believe in the early 1900s. I don't know exactly, because my father, Moshe Aryeh Hyman, later Moshe Cohn, Moshe Aryeh Hyman, was the second of 5 children that not survived the war, but survived childbirth. Because my understanding is that my grandmother Perel had some stillborn children. So they should have gotten married about 1900. Shmuel Hyman was a very learned man, and he studied he grew up in a city called Dej, Romania, which is also in the northwestern part of Romania, which was Transylvania, and the Transylvania area of Hungary that later on became Romania. And my grandmother, Pearl Spitzer, was born to Jacob Spitzer, and they lived in Buchum, which was nearby. And the story goes that my great-grandfather, Yaakov Spitzer, went to the rabbi of Dej and said to the rabbi of Dej, I need a boy for my daughter Perel. And the Dej rabbi Rav said to my great-grandfather, oh, Shmuel Hyman just came back from Chust. Chust was like the Harvard or Yale of the yeshivas in that area. There were 2 major yeshivas, one in Bratislava, where my maternal grandfather went, and where your mother's maternal grandfather went to yeshiva, in Bratislava, which was in Czechoslovakia. And it was called Pressburg, the famous Pressburg yeshiva of the Sofer family. Getting back to the story in Dej, my great-grandfather Yaakov Spitzer said, okay, let me meet this boy. Shmuel Hyman had just came back from Chust. It was Pesach. They came home because they had a break over Passover for that month. They would come home Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and they would be off that whole month, and they would go back to yeshiva. That's mostly the time that they really had off. That was their vacation over the holiday. and they brought my grandfather in, Shmuel Hyman, your great grandfather, and the Dezhirav and Yaakov Spitzer, my great grandfather, tested him on a large chelik of Shulchan Aruch, Yeridea, the big Shulchan Aruch, and Yeridea, and he went home.
What? So he tested him on...
Tested out on a major portion of the Shulchan Aruch that deals with kashrut, deals with kosher animals, meat and milk, dairy and dishes, and koshering dishes and koshering things that typically only the rabbis really studied. For smicha, for ordination, typically you studied that. And that was a period of ordination that they tested on. After the test, he did very well, and it was by heart. It was oral. He couldn't even look inside, my grandfather, Shmuel Hyman, because he knew it very well. And he, they told him, the Dezhirav told my grandfather Shmuel, Mazel Tov, go home to your parents and tell them you got engaged. He didn't even see my grandmother. He didn't even know what she looked like. But that's how it was done in those days. And they finally, of course, they got together and they got engaged, and then they got married, and then they had 5 children that survived childbirth. The oldest one was Rivka. Then came my father. Then came his younger brother Yehuda, Yidu. And then came Gita. And then came Malka. The only people that actually survived the Holocaust, and I'm going to get to it a little bit later, was my father, his younger brother Yidu, and Gita, who you have met and you have a picture with her, and when she showed you her numbers from Auschwitz.